Assalamualaikum and hi. My name is Nurul Shuhada binti Zamsari with matrix number A163735. Today, I want to present about my research, which is rate of carbon dioxide emissions from vehicles among school students towards sustainability. For the introduction, transportation is the facilities for the fast and efficient movement of goods, services, and people that connect various regions. From the diagram, we can see that transportation sector emits the highest carbon emission rather than other sectors. The traffic-related pollution also can cause cardiovascular, respiratory, and nerve disease. The objectives of my study, firstly, is to identify the rate of carbon emissions from vehicles. Secondly, to analyze the steps that need to be taken to reduce the carbon emissions by finding the fastest route to the study area. The third one is to apply GIS software to determine the distance of vehicles to the study area. This is the previous research that I referred to know the methods and objectives to find the fastest route, which is one of my objectives, related to one of my objectives. Next, for the methodology, firstly, I do the observation on types of vehicles used by the students in two of my study area, which is SMK, TTBI, and SMK. Then we collect data from the survey. Data collection was done through a questionnaire among parents of students of SMK TTDI and SMKSA. We used to collect the students' location, type of mode transportation, vehicle fuel consumption, and time required to go to or from the school. And then the study sample was selected based on a simple random sampling method. And then from the data on the collection of the location, respondents' house to the school, we divided into two distance, which is the farthest and the fastest distance. So the fastest distance analysis we used in GIS software. And then from the two different distance, we calculate the emission rate of carbon. Depends on the distance, fuel efficiency, which is based on the fuel types, and then emission factor that based on the types of mode transportation that the students used. And then from the carbon emission rate, we compare and do mapping to see the details of the carbon emission among the students. And then for the results, firstly, we do the analysis to identify the transportation used by the students to the school. So we can see from the data, student travel data, students in SMK TTDI mostly used car to the school rather than use active transportation, which is bicycle and also walking. But for SMKSA, most of the students use van rather than car. And then they also, most of them also used active transportation, with 25% of them use bicycle and also walking to the school. And then for the types of fuel, we can see that petrol fuel is the most used among students' vehicle of SMK TTDI rather than SMKSA. And non-fuel result the highest for SMKSA due to the most of them used active transportation than motor vehicles. And then this is the distance traveled, which affects the type of transportation that students ride to their school. As you can see, For SMKTTI, the motor vehicles used by the students is from 0 kilometer to 1 kilometer, which is the buffer zone that I want to show to you later. The buffer zone is 800 meter, which is in the buffer zone. Students can practice the active transportation, which is by bicycling and walking. So from the data, SMKTTI does not practice the active transportation within that buffer zone, which is 800 meter, because in 0 kilometer to 1 kilometer, they use the car or motor vehicles. And then for SMKSA, they in buffer zone, they do the active transportation. They use the active transportation, and then they start to use the motor vehicles from 1 kilometer to 3 kilometer, which is out of our buffer zone, which is we can compare that SMKSA is practice the active transportation rather than SMKTTI Jaya. Then the analysis proceed, we find the distance, which is shortest and also the farthest distance from respondent's location to the school. So as you can see from this figure, the blue one is the fastest route, while the red one is the farthest route. For your information, the blue one is highway and the red one is the other way. And the number one is the location of the students and to the school. And then from the result of student transportation distance analysis, rate of carbon emission calculated and being compared. So if the students in SMKTTI use long way, they release about 188 kilograms CO2 per student per day. But if they use the short way, they can reduce about 18% of it. And then for SMKSA, if they use the long way, they released about 138 kilogram CO2 per student per day. But if they use the short way to reduce the carbon emission, they exactly can reduce about 12% of it. And then for the mapping, we compare the farthest and also the fastest route. So the first one is SMKTTI Jaya. So as we discussed on the travel details analysis, students in SMKTTI mostly use motor vehicles to the schools. So from the diagram, you can see that mainly red points or red area that produce 58% of it. 58% of them emits the high carbon emission because their distance of their home with the school area was more than 3 kilometers. But if they use the fastest route, only 11% left that emit the high levels of CO2, and then most of them live in more than 5 kilometers from the school. Then for SMKSA, you can see that only a little red area, which is 45% of the students live in that red area because the distance from their home to the school is about 7 kilometers. And then for the fastest route, if they use the fastest route, students can reduce the rate of carbon emission, and only 8.3% of them live or still emits the highest carbon emission. So the conclusion is distance and type of transportation are important influence on the increase in the rate of carbon emissions emitted from vehicles. And then distance travel influence the type of vehicle chosen and ridden by students, either use the active transportation or motor vehicles such as bus, van, motorcycles, and also car. Then students who live more than 5 kilometers emit the most carbon dioxide emissions. My suggestions for this study or research is students who live near a school that does not exceed 800 meters, which is our buffer zone, parents can allow them to walk in groups with friends to school or ride a bicycle. Students that live more than 800 meters from the school, parents can allow their children to ride in vans or school buses. And then for parents who want to send their children to school because they have much time, they can invite their child's friends who wants to go to the same school or same destination to share a car. Apart from adopting the attitude of vehicle sharing, parents or bus and driver bands can also adopt the use of closer and faster distances because it can not only save time, and also reduce vehicle smoke emissions. With this initiative, students will not be exposed to high vehicle smoke emissions or carbon emissions by the cars during their journey and can reduce the problem of shortness of breath cases among the school students. And then this is the references in my study, and thank you.